Swarat
Janmadyasya Yatam Vayaritarataschatya Vigyaswara
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyantiyat Suraya
Dinna Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Mujantija Suraya
Tejo Varimridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha
Tejo Varimrida Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargomrisa
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirahasta Kuhakam Satyang Param Dimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O all-pervading personality of Godhead,
O all-pervading personality of God,
offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because He's the absolute truth
and the primeval cause of all causes,
and the primeval cause of all causes,
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and directly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And He is independent because there's no other cause beyond Him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is He only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji,
the original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By Him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of the water seen to fire or land seen water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of Him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reaction to the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon Him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
which is forever free from the illusory representations in the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of material.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Him, for He is the absolute
Dharma projita kaitravatra,
Dharma Pujita Kaitavutra,
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
Paramo Nirmasaranam Satam,
vedyam vastavam atravastu,
Vedya Vasavamastravasthu,
shivadam tapa trayonmulanam,
Shivadam Tapo Trayomulanam,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
kim va purer ishwaraha,
Kimva Paririshvaraha,
sadyo hridi avarudyate tra,
Sadyurudya Varudita Titra,
krite bihi sususamistakshana.
Kritibhi Shushuhistat Kyanat,
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in
The
heart.
highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth is the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva is
is
maturity.
sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively, submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of knowledge,
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
Sukhamukhat amrita trava sangitam,
pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam,
muhur ahoraska bhuvibhavukaha.
Mura horasika bhuvivavuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
the mature fruit of the desired tree Vedic
the
literature.
mature fruit with the desired tree of the Vedic literature.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishu Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this food has become even more
Although
tasteful.
its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shrambatam Swakuta Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hiryantaksto Hi Abhadrani,
Hridyantasto Hiyaba Sadrani
Vidunati Srihitsatam.
Vidunati Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic literature,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly from the Bhagavad,
is itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's
acts
heart,
as a best-wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and it purifies the devotee who constantly engaged in hearing.
Nasta prayesu abhadresu
Nasta Preshwabhadishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nasti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in his devotional service with the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tada Rajastamo Bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadaya
cheta itairanavidam
Chitaitara Navidam
stitvam sattve prasiddhati.
Stitam Sattve Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes free from the modes of passion of
and
ignorance.
thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And this material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanamanaso
bhagavad bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangha Sajayati.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When all these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes alive by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
chidyante sarvasamsaya,
Chidyante Sarvasamshaya
siyante chasya karmani,
Chidyante Chasakarmani
drista evat manishware.
Drita Evatmaneshwari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of the material
and
affection,
enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables to come at once to the stage of assumption Shamagram,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute truth personality of God.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 31. Tenat manat manam upaiti santam
Tenad manat manam apaiti santam
anandamayo vasane
Anandamayo vashane
etam gatim bhagavatim gatoya
Itam gatim bhagavatim gatoya
savai punarneha visajate naga.
Savai punaneya visajatinga.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Only the purified soul can attain the perfection of associating with the personality of Godhead in complete bliss and satisfaction in his constitutional state. Whoever is able to renovate such devotional perfection is never again attracted by this material world, and he never returns. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. We should especially note in this verse the description of Gatim Bhagavatim, to become merged in the rays of the Para Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as desired by the Brahmavadi impersonalists, is not Bhagavatim perfection. The Bhagavatas never accept merging in the impersonal rays of the Lord, but always aspire after personal association with the Supreme Lord in one of the Vaikuntha spiritual planets in the spiritual sky. The whole of the spiritual sky, of which the total number of material skies is only an insignificant part, is full of unlimited numbers of Vaikuntha planets. The destination of the devotee, the Bhagavata, is to enter into one of the Vaikuntha planets in each of which the personality of Godhead, in his unlimited personal expansions, enjoys himself in the association of unlimited numbers of pure devotees' associates. The conditioned souls in the material world, after gaining emancipation by devotional service, are promoted to these planets. But the number of ever-liberated souls is far, far greater than the number of conditioned souls in the material world, and the ever-liberated souls in the Vaikuntha planets never care to visit this miserable material world. The impersonalists who aspire to merge in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence of the Supreme Lord, but have no conception of loving devotional service to him in his personal form, in the spiritual manifestation, may be compared to certain species of fish who, being born in the rivers and rivulets, migrate to the great ocean. They cannot stay in the ocean indefinitely, for their urge for sense gratification brings them back to the rivers and streams to spawn. Similarly, when the materialist becomes frustrated in his attempts to enjoy himself in the limited material world, he may seek impersonal liberation by merging either with the causal ocean or with the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence. However, as neither the causal ocean nor the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence affords any superior substitute for association and engagement of the senses, the impersonalist will fall again into the limited material world to become entangled once more in the wheel of births and deaths, drawn on by the inextinguishable desire for sensual engagement. But any devotee who enters the kingdom of God by transcendental engagement of his senses in devotional service, and who associates with the liberated souls and the personality of Godhead there, will never be attracted to the limited surroundings of the material world. In the Bhagavad Gita 8:15 also, the same is confirmed as the Lord says, the great Mahatmas or the Bhakti Yogis, after attaining my association, never come back to this material world which is full of miseries and is non-permanent. The highest perfection of life, therefore, is to attain his association and nothing else. The Bhakti Yogi, being completely engaged in the Lord's service, has no attraction for any other process of liberation like jnana or yoga. A pure devotee is a 100% devotee of the Lord and nothing more. We should further note in this verse the two words santam and anandam, which denote that devotional service to the Lord can really bestow upon the devotee two important benedictions, mainly peace and satisfaction. The impersonalist is desirous of becoming one with the Supreme, or in other words, he wants to become the Supreme. This is a myth only. The mystic yogis become encumbered by various mystic powers and so have neither peace nor satisfaction. So, neither the impersonalist nor the yogi can have real peace and satisfaction, but the devotee can be fully peaceful and fully satisfied because of his association with the complete whole. Therefore, merging in the absolute or attaining some mystic powers has no attraction for the devotee. Attainment of love of Godhead means complete freedom from all other attractions. The conditioned soul has many aspirations, such as becoming a religious man, a rich man, or a first-class enjoyer, or becoming God himself, or becoming powerful, like the mystics, and acting wonderfully by getting anything or doing anything. But all these aspirations should be rejected by the prospective devotee who actually wants to revive his dormant love of God. The impure devotee aspires after all of the above material things by perfection of devotion. But a pure devotee has none of the tinges of the above contaminations, which are the influence of material desires. Impersonal speculations and attainment of mystic powers, which are the influence of material desires, impersonal speculations, and attainment of mystic powers. One can attain the stage of love of God by pure devotional service or by a learned labor of love for the sake of the devotee's lovable object, the personality of Godhead. To be more clear, if one wants to attain the stage of love of Godhead, he must give up all desires for material enjoyment. He should refrain from worshiping any of the demigods, and he should devote himself only to the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He must give up the foolish idea of becoming one with the Lord and desire to have some wonderful powers just to get the ephemeral adoration of the world. The pure devotee is only favorably engaged in the service of the Lord without any hope of emolument. This will bring about love of Godhead, or the stage of Santam and Anandam, as stated in this verse. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we see that there are many pitfalls on the path of devotional service, or pure devotional service. These pitfalls are summarized as karma, jnana, yoga. So in other words, the karmi engages in some activities like the karma kanda section of the Vedas, but he or she is attached to better sense gratification on the higher planetary systems. And the jnanis, they cultivate knowledge, and by that knowledge they want to attain liberation in the impersonal Brahman. And the yogis, they engage in developing mystical powers, and in order to develop tremendous material powers that are very, very, let's say, desirable, but not pure devotion. And then there are those who worship demigods for being, but that worship is not proper worship, because the demigods are not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then there's a devotee who worships Krishna uniquely and has no envy of anyone or anything, and is constantly engaged in devotional service. So such a devotee is a pure devotee of the Lord, and such a devotee can eventually progress to Brahman realization and Paramatma realization, and then enter into the spiritual world where he can worship Lakshmi Narayana, and then Rukmini Dwarkadesh, and then eventually Krishna, Radha and Krishna. So we see there are many stages or steps in the quest to return to Godhead or Krishna. But there are many pitfalls also, where people can become attracted to something in the material world and stay here, or fall down. Like the Mayavadis, they fall down because they don't take shelter of a Vaikuntha planet where Lord Narayana is present and develop their loving relationship with Lord Narayana. They don't take shelter of devotional service. They give it up. And therefore, they only attain Sat Chit, eternity and knowledge, but no Ananda. And therefore, eventually they get bored and they fall down. Okay, so this is a very important part of education of a devotee. Vidyam cha yas yastad vedubhayam saha. avidyaya militam chitva vidyayamritam asnute. So one should simultaneously learn knowledge and ignorance side by side, so that ignorance does not befool or bewilder the devotee or attract the devotee in any way, and then the devotee completely dedicates himself to transcendental knowledge. It's very easy to be attracted by the material nature. We've been in this material nature from time immemorial. In other words, we cannot calculate when it started or when we started. And obviously, we've gone through 8,400,000 species of bodies already to come gradually to the human form of life. And we can, as opposed to what Darwin says, that there's only evolution of species, there's evolution and devolution. You can go up and you can go down in the different species. So that means that we could be in the material entanglement for an inestimable time, for billions and billions of years. Therefore, it's important that we assimilate this knowledge gradually by regular hearing and chanting. But the good news is, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter, 24th verse, Tasmat Shastram Pramanam Te Karya Karya Vyavastito Yatva Shastra Vidanoktam Karma Kartam Iharasi. So this verse says, one should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Well, in this purport, the amazing statement is there. It says, as stated in the 15th chapter, all the rules and regulations of the Vedas are meant for knowing Krishna. If one understands Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita and becomes situated in Krishna consciousness, engaging himself in devotional service, he has reached the highest perfection of knowledge offered by the Vedic literature. That is, when you're constantly engaged in devotional service, you have understood the Vedic literature. But then this amazing statement comes. If one understands Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita and becomes situated in Krishna consciousness, engaging himself in devotional service, he has reached the highest perfection of knowledge offered by the Vedic literatures. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made this process very easy. Now, we just have been reading how hard it is to attain perfection in the mechanical yoga system, right? But Lord Chaitanya made this process very easy. That's in 1624 and in other places that we've read already. So he asked people simply to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and to engage in the devotional service of the Lord and eat the remnants of foodstuff offered to the deity. One who is, so only three things, right? Chant Hare Krishna, engage in the devotional service of the Lord, and eat and respect Mahaprasadam, right? One who is directly engaged in all these devotional activities is to be understood as having studied all the Vedic literature. So oftentimes people say to me, oh, Prabhu, I just don't have the intelligence to understand all this philosophy but I like to do service. Well, that's the whole point of the philosophy. You understand? If you like to do service and you always have service 24 hours a day, then you've understood the Vedas. And you're not envious of anyone, and you're always satisfied simply by devotional service. You don't need anything else. You have understood the Vedas. So you don't have to be a bookworm. You have to be a workworm. And say, if you work in Krishna consciousness always, you've understood the book also, right? So one who is directly engaged in all these devotional activities is to be understood as having studied all the Vedic literature. He has come to the conclusion perfectly. Of course, for the ordinary persons who are not in Krishna consciousness or who are not engaged in devotional service, what is to be done and what is not to be done must be decided by the injunctions of the Vedas. One should act accordingly without argument. That is called following the principles of Shastra. Okay, so that is a definition. One should act accordingly without argument. In other words, one should learn what is to be done and what is not to be done by the injunctions of the Vedas. One should act accordingly without argument. That is called following the principles of Shastra or Scripture. Shastra is without the four principal defects that are visible in the conditioned soul. Okay, now this is an important point because Shastra, like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagvatam, are without material defects. Shastra is without the four principal defects that are visible in the conditioned soul. Imperfect senses, the propensity for cheating, certainty of committing mistakes, and certainty of being illusioned. These four principal defects in conditioned life disqualify one from putting forth rules and regulations. Therefore, the rules and regulations as described in the Shastra, being above these defects, are accepted without alteration by all great saints, acharyas, and great souls. Okay. So, one time Prabhupada was speaking to this Dr. Patel in Juhu Beach. He would go on a walk every morning, and this Dr. Patel would come with him, and as well as the devotees. And Prabhupada was explaining that in the Vedas there is some concession for eating meat. And Dr. Patel said, I reject that. He said, I don't accept that part of the Vedas. And Prabhupada said, you cannot do that. You cannot reject what the Vedas say. And Patel was really, arguing with Prabhupada, And Prabhupada explained to him that the Vedas give an opportunity for everyone, even the meat eaters, to make spiritual advancement. So you cannot reject any part of the Vedas. Right? And here it says that these four principal defects in conditioned life disqualify one from putting forth rules and regulations. So that disqualified Dr. Patel. He had no right to say, I reject this part of the Vedas. Therefore, the rule, because he himself has these four defects, so how can he figure out what should be done and what should not be done? Therefore, the rules and regulations as described in the Shastra, being above these defects, are accepted without alteration by all great saints, acharyas, and great souls. So, should we eat meat because there is some concession in the Vedas for eating meat? No. Because if you get initiated, you've promised not to eat meat, not to do this, not to do that. This is to help people who are very, very conditioned, to gradually wean them off of those sinful activities like eating meat. But Dr. Patel thought he was smarter than Vyasadeva, and that he could reject that part of the Vedas. That's complete nonsense. That shows who was a nonsense person. He was a nonsense person for even saying that. And Prabhupada did not accept it. In India, there are many parties of spiritual understanding, generally classified as two, the impersonalists and the personalists. Both of them, however, lead their lives according to the principles of the Vedas. Without following the principles of the scriptures, one cannot elevate himself to the perfectional stage. One who actually, therefore, understands the purport of the Shastras is considered fortunate. Well, there was one of those persons who didn't follow the instructions of the Vedas, but still pretended to be a great follower of the Vedas, and that was Ramakrishna, so-called Paramahans, and many others today who claim to be Paramahansas or avatars of Krishna, blah, 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 but they don't follow the Vedas. So they cannot be accepted, especially if they reject, like for example, this Asad Guru, he says, why read a book that's 5,000 years old when I'm present here now? Right. So those type of statements are typical of the cheaters. They want you to ignore the Vedas and just listen to what they say. Just like Patel, he said, well, I reject that part of the Vedas. You can't reject any part of the Vedas. Who are you? So, in human society, aversion to the principles of understanding the Supreme Personality of God is the cause of all fall downs. That is the greatest offense of human life. What is that? Aversion to the principles of understanding the Supreme Personality of God. Therefore, Maya, the material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always giving us trouble in the shape of the threefold miseries. So now we can understand again why there's so much suffering in India. Why is there so much emphasis on worshiping the demigods in Hinduism? In fact, they pride themselves. And whenever you read a textbook for high school kids, and there's always something about the world religions section of a textbook, and it always characterizes Hinduism as polytheistic, worshiping many gods. Well, first of all, there's no such word as Hindu in Sanskrit, right? And there are some statements about worshiping demigods, though, and let's see what they are. 1 second. There's a statement in Bhagavad Gita Prabhupada makes that in the absence of knowledge of Krishna, absence of knowledge of Krishna. 1 second. If we cannot understand Krishna, then yajnas to devas is recommended. This is 3rd chapter, 12th verse. Did you know this is in the Bhagavad Gita? Huh? Third chapter, 12th verse. Let's see what it says. For one who cannot understand that the personality of Godhead is, what the personality of Godhead is, sacrifice to the demigods is recommended. There it is. Chapter 3, verse number 12. According to the different material qualities of the persons concerned, different types of yajnas are recommended in the Vedas. Worship of different demigods is also on the same basis, namely according to different qualities. For example, the meat eaters are recommended to worship the goddess Kali, the ghastly form of material nature, and before the goddess, the sacrifice of animals is recommended. But for those who are in the mode of goodness, the transcendental worship of Vishnu is recommended. But ultimately, all yajnas are meant for gradual promotion to the transcendental position. For ordinary men, at least 5 yajnas known as Pancha Mahayajna are necessary. Okay, so, and there, let's see, there may be another statement. Yeah, there's another statement, 12th chapter, 20th verse, it says, if one does not associate with a pure devotee, the impersonal conception may be beneficial. Did you know that was there in the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, that's also there. So, well, the Vedas are a big tent where everyone can fit into it, right? Even the impersonalist, the meat eater, and so forth. But that's not the goal of the Vedas, right? Unfortunately, because some brahmanas make money by leaving out parts of the Vedas, and they make money by doing all kinds of yagyas. Like one time, long time ago, when we had a little house here, one of the founding priests of the Hindu temple in Bothell. This is before they had a temple in Bothell. They used to do their programs in Bellevue in a rented hall. Anyway, that priest, he was a nice man. I think he died now. He came to our temple, and he was doing some puja in our temple. Our temple was that little house. And he brought his puja book with him. And he did some puja. And then afterwards he said, I got every type of mantra in my book. You just ask me what you want, I can give you the mantra. You see, that's what's going on in India, right? They have every mantra for any material desire you have, right? So that's not the purpose of the Vedas, right? But in other words, they don't stop those pujas. It's a permanent business, right? Puja for pay, right? And they make their living by doing all these different pujas. Just like in India, you see every day in the business section, there's a brahmana. You can tell he's a brahmana because he has his dhoti on, and he has some red marks on his forehead, and he has his sika tied and so forth. And he's walking around, and he's stopping in all the shops. And then when he stops, they open a sort of like a cabinet on the wall, and that's like a little altar, and he does some puja there, and they give him money. That's so that the business doesn't go bankrupt. Have you seen that? Yeah. You see, it's a business. It's become a business. They're not teaching people. He said, look, this is not really the goal, The goal is, you should aim to go back to Godhead in life, No, they don't teach that. They just teach, keep doing the puja, your business will be all right. And even here, people call us sometimes, they're opening up a new business, so they want us to come and do a puja and so forth. Well, what's the puja for? So that the business will be a success, right? So whether it's a success or failure, and everyone's going to fail anyway, right? There's birth, death, old age, and disease. So therefore, the real purpose in life should be to understand Krishna consciousness. Okay, and then Prabhupada continues. He says, therefore, Maya, the material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always giving us trouble in the shape of the threefold miseries. So all the trouble that people are having in India now, and it's horrible. It is actually horrible. People dying in the street, being turned away from the hospital, and no oxygen, no help, no money. They can't work. Everything's, they're trying to force lockdowns and things. Like, for example, Turkey yesterday declared total lockdown in the whole country. Very few people can go out. You have to stay at home. So that this corona is destroying whole countries, taking many lives. However, the reason is that people are not functioning correctly in their spiritual activities. They're using spirituality for material advancement, and that is a failure, and that will cause all these problems: pestilence, war, poverty, sickness, all that stuff. So, and then today, this purport is full of important points, but I wanted to focus on some of them. Yesterday, we read something really important that was called Bhakti Lata Bija, the seed of devotional service. Now, this is explained in detail in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19, starting from verse 152. Madhya Lila, chapter 19, verse 152, which says, when a person receives the seed of devotional service, he or she should take care of it by becoming a gardener and sowing the seed in his heart. If he waters the seed gradually by the process of Shravana and Kirtana, that's what we're doing, right? Shravana and Kirtana, hearing and chanting, hearing and repeating. Or here it says hearing and chanting. The seed will begin to sprout because that's the merciful water, the watering of the seed of devotional service that's planted in the heart by the devotees, spiritual masters, Siksha and Diksha gurus, begins to sprout when you wet it. And you're wetting it every day by this Shravana Kirtana. So it says, in the purport, Prabhupada says, to live with devotees or to live in a temple means to associate with Shravana Kirtana. So there's a difference between associating with eating and sleeping as opposed to Shravana Kirtana, or talking nonsense and eating nonsense as opposed to Shravana Kirtana. So here Prabhupada explains what the purpose is for living near a temple or in a temple, or living in the association of devotees. Sometimes neophyte devotees think that they can continue the Shravana Kirtana process without worshipping the deity. But the execution of such Shravana Kirtana is meant for highly developed devotees like Haridas Thakura, who engaged in the Shravana Kirtana process without worshipping the deity. However, one should not falsely imitate Haridasa Thakura and abandon deity worship just to try to engage in Shravana Kirtana. This is not possible for neophyte devotees. The word Guru Prasada indicates that the spiritual master is very merciful in bestowing the boon of devotional service upon the disciple. That is the best possible gift the spiritual master has to offer. Those with a background of pious life are eligible to receive life's supreme benefit, and to bestow this benefit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead sends his representative to impart his mercy. Endowed with the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master distributes the mercy to those who are elevated and pious. Thus, the spiritual master trains his disciples to render devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Guru Kripa. It is Krishna Prasada, Krishna's mercy, that he sends a bona fide spiritual master to the deserving disciple. By the mercy of Krishna, one meets the bona fide spiritual master, and by the mercy of the spiritual master, the disciple is fully trained in devotional service of the Lord. Bhakti Lata Bija means the seed of devotional service. Everything has an original cause or seed. For any idea, program, plan, or device, there is first of all the contemplation of the plan, and that is called the bija, or seed. Just like we had a contemplation for a Indian plant or Indian vegetable garden, right? Using the techniques of Chaitanya Sundara's brother, who is a horticulturist, right? So he has trained us to learn how to grow these vegetables in a way, in a technique that he has refined and is teaching in India. And now he can put in his resume he's also teaching in America. So, the methods, rules, and regulations by which one is perfectly trained in devotional service constitute the Bhakti Lata Bija. So the methods, rules, and regulations by which one is perfectly trained in devotional service constitute the Bhakti Lata Bija, the seed of devotional service, or the seed of devotional service. This Bhakti Lata Bija is received from the spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. Other seeds called Anya Bilasita, Anya Bilasa Bija include Karma Bija, Jnana Bija. If one is not fortunate enough to receive the Bhakti Lata Bija from the spiritual master, he instead cultivates such seeds as Karma Bija, Jnana Bija, or political, social, or philanthropic Bijas, seeds. Prabhupada is very witty, you know. However, the Bhakti Lata Bija is different from these other Bijas. The Bhakti Lata Bija can be received only through the mercy of the spiritual master. Therefore, one has to satisfy the spiritual master to get the Bhakti Lata Bija. Yasya Prasada, Bhagavat Prasada. The Bhakti Lata Bija is the origin of devotional service. Unless one satisfies the spiritual master, he gets the bija or root cause of karma, jnana, and yoga without the benefit of devotional service. So this is what's going on in India. They're getting the karma bija, jnana bija, yoga bija, but not the bhakti lata bija. This is the problem in India. But one who is faithful to his spiritual master gets the Bhakti Lata Bija. The Bhakti Lata Bija is received when one is initiated by the bona fide spiritual master. After receiving the spiritual master's mercy, one must repeat his instructions. And this is called Shravana Kirtana, hearing and chanting. One who has not properly heard from the spiritual master or who does not follow the regulative principles is not fit for chanting kirtana, or for chanting, or kirtana. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 2:41, Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ekaha Kurunandana. One who has not listened carefully to the instructions of the spiritual master is unfit for chanting or for preaching the cult of devotional service. One has to water the Bhakti Lata Bija by receiving instructions from the spiritual master. So I wanted to read that because, and there's a lot more in this section where it's explaining the Bhakti Lata Bija. We might read one purport every day for a couple of days until we get through it. But this is very important, this hearing and chanting, Shravanam Kirtanam. Very, very important. It should be done, Prabhupada said, 3 times a day. Well, if we can do it once a day, that's good on the path of 3 times a day. Eventually, it'll be 3 times a day. But we should do this at least once a day, as we're doing, because it's extremely important to maintain one's position in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavan Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi Haribo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram